If you're diabetic, you didn't get there in a day. You got there in years. You got there 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. If you expect it to change in 3 months, it would not be realistic. You've got to understand that if I fall off my diet, then it feels like a failure. And I think this is also part of the reward pathways in their mind, right? Because you set this goal and you didn't achieve this goal, so you didn't get the reward. So there's no reinforcing behavior to get you back to that. And you have to work twice as hard to go back to the beginning to say, I have to be on a diet. You could be sitting there and having an issue with your partner. The stress levels will be the same as being attacked by a tiger. And we have no vocabulary, physical vocabulary for this because we're not running. We're actually sitting in a chair. We have no tools psychologically to deal with that because our tool before would be to move. I think the easiest thing to do is like to get up with the sun, actually to spend some time in the sun in the morning. You have the best experience in terms of, how your body will actually, because this is what you're designed to do. So if you do what you're designed to do, you're automatically in sync with, your health.
When I met Shiva Subramanian at his office in Bangalore, and we were having this coconut milk coffee. By the way, that was the best coffee that I've ever had. I was telling Shiva that, hey, Shiva, I want to talk about health and how we should really look at health in a very holistic manner. And everybody seems to be asking the question that, how can I be healthy? He turned around and said that the question in itself has a problem. The problem is that what do we mean by that I want to be healthy? For some, it could be losing weight. For some, they want to go on a run every morning. Or for some, they want to eat healthy food. He went on to share how we look at health in a very fragmented and just a secluded way. For instance, when you go to the doctor, they will look at health just from the perspective of the part of the body that's not operating well or that's not functioning properly, and they will give you some sort of a remedy to just fix that without considering the food that you are eating, the habits that you have, the environment that you live in. Shiva Subramanian is the founder of Connect Venture Group. Now, through this venture group, Shiva is building multiple companies to build the relationship between health and sustainability. And for instance, the simplest way to explain what Shiva Subramanian does is, let's say if you want to eat healthy, that means you need to eat right food, which means now let's talk about food. Now, when you're looking at your food, then what about the chemical and all the fertilizers and stuff that is going on your food when they are being, produced? Now, Shiva says, okay, let's start a company that is going to fix the soil. We are going to create an ecosystem where you don't use all these chemicals. And now, okay, you fix that soil, but what about the water that you're putting in growing that food? Now he says, okay, let's fix water, and that's another company, right? So in this episode, you will hear one of the most holistic way anybody could have looked at health, where how it connects with the environment and sustainability. This episode is something that you might feel, oh, that's like a lot of heavy concepts here. But Shiva, when I asked Shiva, can you simplify this for us? He says, this is complex and it's meant to be complex. We tried our best to bring it to you the way it is. So enjoy this conversation, and probably this can be the beginning for you to really understand how do you take charge of your health. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Inspiring Talk podcast. I'm super excited to be joined by Shiva Subramanian. Shiva, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bijay. Pleasure to be here.
Shiva, since we spoke last week, you bombarded me with so much of information. Like, I'm overwhelmed to the point, I'm scared because I'm half of the things I couldn't even understand what you said. So today we'll try and take few pieces of it and, try and decode that. So when we're having conversation, you said, when somebody says that I want to be healthy, it's stupid. Why?
It's simple. I suppose it's contextual because you need to know what that means to you, right? It's different for somebody who's 60 years old. It's different if you're a woman who's going through menopause. It's different if you're young. It's different if you're an athlete. Now, I think the thing to define is, what does this mean to you? What are you actually saying? Because today it's become a word that's just used so freely. When you say healthy, one person's thinking nutrition. I'm thinking I'm going on a diet. And another person's thinking exercise. But what does this construct of health actually embody? And I think the important thing over here is to clarify that with every individual to say, what is it that you actually mean? I mean, you must have something specific in mind. Look, it's different if you're an athlete and you want to be healthy, right? And it's different if you're somebody who's sedentary, who has a stressed out job, and you're looking at health from a different lens. So I think the first thing that we need to do is to deconstruct this into its very simple components to see what we can chew, right? And I think that's the start.
But how did we get here where you will say like, hey, you know what? If you want to be healthy, do this. If you want to like get fit, do this. Like the blanket or the general kind of, suggestions that people...
Don't you think that's what we're being bombarded by every day, right? We have so much of health. It's the marketability of health, right? I think health comes with a quotient of fear because you're worried about, the time that you're going to die. You're going to worried about, today there's this whole conversation on longevity. There's this whole conversation about, how much exercise you do. If you do too much exercise, you may die of a heart attack. If you do too less, you may have diabetes. So all of this, you're bombarded by so much of information every day. And makes you wonder, where in this continuum you are and what the need to even consider this is, right? A regular person living every day is not going to be thinking, am I healthy or am I not healthy? Unless something comes into his presence or mind to actually ask this question itself, right? Or maybe it's by looking at something outside and, you have some media kind of response and you're like, somebody's put up a blood test and you're like, should I do a blood test? But where does it start? I think you have to start with saying like, what made you want to do this? Because see, the direction that you're going to take, that means you've already chosen a gateway. It's very interesting because every person is going to do what they want to do. So for example, if you choose the physical gateway, then you're thinking exercise in gym is health. Now, if you're not very physical, you're thinking, maybe I'll just change my diet. Maybe that's good enough. For other people, it may be like, look, I have a serious problem and I need to get into pharmacology or get some pharmaceuticals, which means I have to go to the clinical aspect of medicine, right? So I think that we also have to define health is all of those things. Is it clinical? Are you? So let's look at it like, are you in a critical stage? Are you in a more like stage of like, let's call it vanity, right? Where you want to look a certain way. Completely different person and different outcome over there, as opposed to something like biological even, right? If you think about it, what's happening with the hormones in my body, what's happening, to something like I have a problem. I have a knee problem. I have a infection. So all of that still comes under the big banner of health. So when somebody says, I want to be healthy, it's difficult for us to discern what that actually means, right? So maybe the first step is to say, what does that mean to you? What out of all of this stuff that you see, what does it mean to you and why? I think the question that we have to ask is, why? And what is it that you mean? Because if you consider those two things, then we can come to the how, right? Yeah. But if you don't consider the first two questions, then I think that we're doing something very generic, which means a waste of time, and that people are having different conversations, right? Which means the chances of your success on your outcome becomes very less.
And also, even in any of the context, right? Whatever the context, somebody maybe wants to be fit or wants to get rid of some chronic problems that they're dealing with, or whether they want to avoid any kind of genetic diseases or any kind of disorder that's passing in the generation. But what's evident in what you've shared is we are looking at just purely from one aspect, right? We're not looking from the holistic angle, like you said, like psychosocial and biological aspect of it, right? And when we're not doing that, then it's always going to be, you are putting a lot of stress on one aspect of it, and then you realize there are other two, like you said, psychological and let's say the social aspect of it is also contributing to the stress, and you're not getting the desired result.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it like a marathon. You can't look at it like a sprint. And it's okay to fall a couple of times, you get up. And if you have this long-term vision, if you think about it, if you're ill, if you've not been able to, if you're diabetic, you didn't get there in a day. You got there in years. You
Yeah.
got there 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. If you expect it to change in 3 months, it would not be realistic. If you give yourself the time to change it and make the changes consistently in small ways, we find that it's the best way to make those changes. And you'll find that it works almost all the time then. But the problem is we're taking these, like I think today with the judgment that we have on ourselves as well, you got to understand that if I fall off my diet, then it feels like a failure. And I think this is also part of the reward pathways in their mind, right? Because you set this goal and you didn't achieve this goal, so you didn't get the reward. So there's no reinforcing behavior to get you back to that. And you have to work twice as hard to go back to the beginning to say, I have to be on a diet. But maybe there's another way of looking at it. It's normal to fall off because sometimes motivational levels, because of the social, the environmental, look, it could be a celebration. That's also a social, right? But at that moment, if you're going to celebrate, it's okay. And maybe that you weren't optimally healthy. But as humans, we're such complex creatures that this social enjoyment that you had will well make up for the time psychologically than if you didn't express that, right? Because we are so community oriented. It is a social engagement. Now we become so dogmatic about one diet or one thing that we do and become so judgmental that it makes consistency almost impossible, because we've now come to a world of it's good or bad. But this whole health is in a gray area. To actually transcend this gray area, right? You have to be a little patient with it and be patient with yourself. So it's not about the failing. You just got to get up. You know you're going to fail. And it's always better to say, listen, I know I've taken a harsh path. I know I may fall off. I just got to recorrect tomorrow and it's fine. As opposed to falling off completely and being like completely like, devaluing the work that you've already done and then letting yourself go and starting again from scratch. Then you're stuck in this.
I think it's important for you to understand the behavior that you said, right?
Yeah.
Like you are going to go through these cycles of being aware of it and then wanting to change and then finding somebody who can help you and, taking action and then maybe again faltering or falling back and then repeating the whole cycle. And that's how like change or any behavioral change that you're trying to make.
Exactly. And also it helps you if you have a metric then, right?
You're like, I
that's
have very
a
important.
metric, right?
Yeah.
If I don't have a metric, then I'm just trying to change. And then a change seems like you don't have a particular goal. So you don't have the celebration of reaching somewhere where you can say, okay, now I can go to the next part of what I want to do, right? And
because our brain is goal seeking, like that's how our brain functions, right? We're always seeking for like, what's the next goal? It's
the next step, right? So, but then this way you can actually legitimately give yourself that and say that this is what I want to do. And the smaller the steps, then the metrics can keep changing and improving, right? It could be your eyesight, or it could be diabetic, or it could be your lipid profile. And, here's the other choice that we come to. I think we need to also consider the belief system now. Because the belief system that you have will also decide a lot of the context of what health and goals mean. Let me give you an example. If you don't have time and you're not somebody who has the energy to do something, pharmacy may be the best option. We have to be agnostic of saying this is the right kind of health, this is not. In another situation where somebody has the ability and the energy to make a lifestyle change, that will be what is healthy, right? You can't judge somebody by saying pharmacy is bad, and you can't judge somebody saying, why are you not doing pharmacy? And this is where that preparation becomes a critical component, because I could have a uric acid issue and I could do a tremendous lifestyle change, or could go to a doctor and there's medication, as you know, that's available for that problem, right? And it's all about energy and the ability to make a change, right? And the motivation to make a change. Now, say if you're in a stressful situation, you may not be able to make that change, and maybe pharmacy is the lesser of two evils, right? Because now coming back to the first part, this is the preventative health goal of, look, I don't want to feel like this. What is the best thing I can do?
And when you're talking about those three different aspects, one of the things that you've stressed a lot on is the stress, which is, and rising cortisol level and stuff like that, right? So do you think like that is one of the like really key components that people should be really looking at, like the stress of it, which on any aspect, right? Whether that's...
Thank you for bringing that up. I think you're spot on with this one, because I think we have eustress and then you have de-stress, like distress, right? And I think it's how we perceive stress, because it's not stress, cortisol. which is created in a situation where you have to respond, is a hormone that's going to heighten, your senses and is going to get you ready for a situation. Our genes are still 35,000 years old. They haven't learned what our last 200 years or 100 years of change has now made us, right? You got to understand that if I was to heighten my awareness, it was either to fight or to run away from a threat. And I think there was a third option of actually even freezing, right? That's something new that's coming, because sometimes people don't move, you're stuck like a deer in headlights. But these are the three components of what we would have anthropologically done, for 35,000 years. And then suddenly today, you could be sitting there and having an issue with your partner, and the stress levels will be the same as being attacked by a tiger, right? And we have no vocabulary, physical vocabulary for this, because we're not running. Yeah. We're actually sitting in a chair. It could be a confrontation with your boss. It could be job security. It could be COVID. We have no tools psychologically to deal with that, because our tool before would be to move, right? I mean, if you think about movement, what happens when any of these adrenaline-driven issues actually happen is that, that all the blood gets out from your digestive system and all of that and goes into the big muscles, right? And, so that you can respond in a physical manner to this, right? Because that would be the logical thing, that from our mammalian genes all the way down to being human, that's what we've done for thousands and millions of years. And suddenly now we have this really weird new stress, and it'll probably take us another 2,000 years to adapt to it, right? But because the genes are moving slowly and this continuum is happening. But you and me are now sitting. But I have this high amount of glucose in my body because my body is ready to utilize the high amount of glucose and fats in my body to move, because you've just, we've had this, maybe for example, say a confrontation. I have all this juice in my body, which is all designed to move. And all I'm doing is sitting here and my heart rate's up and everything else. And there's no output for this, because it was supposed to be used for something and I'm not using this. Now, this may have happened once a day. You think about the number of times that a person puts themselves through this, and this is threshold for this, right? You've already heightened yourself up. If you notice the days that you get angry, you're more liable to get angry again. I don't know whether you actually notice this,
no,
right?
Absolutely, that's true. Yeah. That's true. It keeps on adding up to,
because your cortisol level is high, and then because it's
high.
higher, you may be reacting to things in an unreasonable manner. So
what you're saying is, let's say something happened, your cortisol level is high, and you did nothing about it. Like, you were supposed to either fight, flight, or freeze, but you're doing nothing about it. Because
you probably froze, but you didn't do the other two.
You didn't do the other two, right? So, which means then you didn't dissipate that. You didn't lower that, and when something else happened, it keeps
I think we have to think about it as an ebb and flow. But look, if your normal cortisol level is going to go up in the morning and come down in the evening, it's like a bell curve, right? I mean, you go in the morning and then by evening it has to come down, because then your melatonin will kick in and you can go to sleep. Now imagine this. Your normal highest cortisol level is what's going to wake you up. But now you're going to be doing this 3-4 times a day. And by the time evening comes, your cortisol level is still going to be much higher, which means you can't create the feedback loop for melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. So you're not going to have a good night of rested sleep. You're not going to have your immunity that's going to kick in, your prolactin that kicks in later to help your immunity. All this stuff, you just stopped all of that for the whole day. So not only did you get pissed, after that, you didn't do anything to downregulate that, right? There's a lot of breathing stuff that you can do today. There's all these regulations, all this other stuff. Yeah. But even very quick, right? Even you can do it in 5 minutes or whatever it is. There are many, many tools available, which you can find everywhere, right? Whether it's a breathing coach, whether it's meditation, whether it's Tai Chi, whether it's yoga, it doesn't matter. That's all movement oriented. It's all breathing oriented. It's all down regulation. But imagine that nobody's actually doing any of this because you're there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is from there, you're rushing in traffic to get to work, which is also a stressor, right? Now, let me add another thing into it. I want you to imagine a regular person now who has decided that he has to get a gym workout in that day. Now, if you look at it, right, and let's just look at the logic of this. I'm going to have to pack my clothes. So that takes me 10 minutes. I have to drive to the gym to another place. Say that's 20 minutes. That's half an hour gone. I'm going to have a shower after I finish. That's another 15 minutes. I'm going to have to repack, and then I have to get some food. That's 1 hour of not the time that you're working out in the gym, just preparing. That's 2 hours of your life gone in just that preparation on a day that you're already super stressed. Now, was it even worth going to the gym? We have to consider the whole, right? This is what I meant by that whole social context or the environmental context, right? So would it have been easier to just walk in the park next door to the office? And this is the change that we're also not able to make, right? Because this is called flexible behavior. We don't have that very much today because flexible adaptive behavior will help you be consistent and move the changes, but you have to be calm for that. But because it's another thing you let yourself down on, you may be so harsh on yourself that you will stress, and then stress to do this and come back completely depleted, right? And this is more the complexity of real living, isn't it? And this is what I was telling you about as well earlier. So when we talk about stress, I think, like, again, stress is not a bad thing. It's how we modulate it that is important, right? And there are many ways of doing that. You can't tell anybody how to do that because it's an individual experience.
You said modulate.
Modulate. You don't want to get rid of stress because it helps you learn. Do you know that the stress cytokines, even when you have say IL-1, it actually keys your memory because the things that you're sometimes scared about, like that's why if you notice before your exams as kids, you would remember everything because you were really worried before the exam and everything goes in your brain. But 3 weeks before, nothing goes into your brain. I mean, it's really interesting, right? But that's actually a neurological function, right? It's a natural neurological function of how we are keyed. Stress helps us even respond to situations because your brain becomes very sharp. Your eyesight changes. So who says stress is bad? Stress is not bad. It's being constantly stressed that's bad, right? Because then imagine stress is a habit. And then you constantly are in this loop and you don't know how to get out. So you'll feel rushed. You're always going to be rushing from one place to another. Now, that kind of stress is like where you've gone past the bell curve into the other level, right? So when you're modulating stress, you keep it in the sweet zone for yourself. And you got to understand that I suppose every person has a different stress threshold or stress appetite. And that's how that would work.
Got it. So that plays like a really big role in the whole of it, right? And you mentioned about circadian rhythm. Like I want to double click a bit into that. Okay? So first, for everyone who's listening, like what is circadian rhythm? Maybe we'll start there and then we can look at like the whole cycle of it and the things that messes it up and so on.
Oh, great. I think let's be really simple about it. All of us are chained to the sun. We're actually, all our cells are sort of chained to the sun itself. And it's a big part of who we are and how we function because, again, 35,000 years of these genetics are all programmed as for us because we're diurnal creatures. We get up with the sun and we go to sleep with the sun, right? And that's how it's been. Even you got to understand our genes come from the mammals and so on and so forth from before. And all of that was chained to the sun because of the way that we are designed. Now, when I say the circadian rhythm, it means how efficient you are in terms of being chained to the sun. So if you want to sleep well, you get up with the sun and you sleep with the sun. Remember I was telling you about the cortisol being up in the morning. You need the cortisol to be high up in the morning to actually wake you up. And if you notice, if you're chained to the sun, you'll get up when the sunlight actually comes in. And your crescendo of your cortisol and your sun will be closely aligned, which means then your sleep cycle at the end of the day will also be exactly tuned into that, right? Now, if that happens, then you're going to be sleeping and you're going to get the best benefit of that sleep. I think, look, they say there are 4 stages of REM and deep sleep. One of it is for cognitive, the processing the cognitive. Let's again, keeping it simple, everything that's happening to the day, your emotions, all of that, you're processing it. And deep sleep, where it's your healing sleep for your body, your cellularly structuring. If you put that in a broad basket, right? Now, anything that disrupts that in terms of time, in terms of blue light, all of that kind of stuff at the wrong time is going to disrupt that. And it's going to disrupt your immunity. It's going to disrupt your cognitive function. They also found in recent times that even your glucose levels the next day, if you have one of those CGMs, will show you that you're 5 or 10 points higher the next day in terms of even your glucose control is mitigated, like much worse. So cognition comes down, your glucose control comes down. So that can't be very great. Now imagine doing that every day. So I go out, I finish work, maybe you go to a party, or you're watching a late night movie. Right now it's World Cup football. But all of that takes a toll, right? And adds to whatever is happening. And I think that this is what I mean by the circadian clock. So I think the easiest thing to do is like to get up with the sun, actually to spend that time in the sun in the morning. You have the best experience in terms of, how your body will actually, because this is what you're designed to do. So if you do what you're designed to do, you're automatically in sync with, your health. This is so simple, right? And when you go to sleep, you take a walk in the evening with the light going down because the tones of light change. So automatically the light is telling your body when to switch on and switch off. a lot of times the organs all of them are connected. So you got to understand that the same, the molecules in the cells are all connected, right? They're called period genes in per and tim genes. And these genes are actually in every cell, and they're actually producing these, I suppose, molecules to help you understand that it's time to go to sleep and, get tired. Again, it's consistency. Can you go to sleep the same day, time every day? Okay. It may not be 8:30
of the time.
And it may not be 8:30 like we used to before. Maybe it's 10:30. But it's better than it being beyond that. Yeah. And that's how you become consistently to bring it down. And then you'll realize that you can get up early in the morning. You have more energy. So that's all the fallout, right? Your immunity is better. That you're getting a better quality of sleep. And today, Bijay, you can measure all of that. You got the Aura rings. You've got I know, there's so many wearables to do that. In the old days, you didn't have any of that, right? And this is another metric. You say, if I really want to help myself, then I could just buy one of these tools or have any of these tools and see how I improve that. And even if it's not 100% accurate, it gives you a metric that you can change, and you can try different things because each individual is different and his exploration will also be different. Also, there's no right time. It may be 7 hours for you and maybe 8 hours for somebody else, maybe 9 hours for somebody. That's something that only it's very unique and individual centric, like we discussed in the beginning. So again, you can't tell somebody that you need to do this, right? Are you doing well with it? Is your blood work well? Are you recovering well? Okay. I mean, as long as it's working for you, it's good. It's when you're getting tired. Look, your body is always telling you stuff. It's when you're getting tired, it's when you're getting sick that some alarm bells have to go off, because that's your body's way of communicating to you that we're not in synchronicity with the environment, our social circle, our biological circle, so to speak, or our immunity, right? And that's how I would look at it.
So sunlight, like you said, has like a big role in playing, right? And also, which brings me to the point of, like, let's say the nutrients that a lot of people in India now, I was telling you before having this conversation that, my grandmother 84 and she's still, running, was climbing trees and, stuff like that. And she never had any kind of, problem with her life and with her health, particularly, like, nothing major, and she's still fine. And now when you say this, it all begins to make sense, because she lived in a community surrounded by people, really close-knit, people surrounded, and know that there are people whom she can go and, hang out with and build those relationships and stuff like that. And then she was doing work throughout the day, and, and she was following the, rhythm of the sun, right? She would like go to bed by like 7 and wake up very early in the morning and then follow that, right?
You're spot right. In fact, all the blue zones, they're talking about the longevity centers of the world. Like this, it's a book called The Blue Zone anyway. Yeah. And, there's this whole thing about it. It's in Sardinia and in all these places where people are living like this, in Japan, in Okinawa.
Really long time, yeah.
It's exactly what you're talking about, but you don't need to go anywhere. You can just go to the a village that's still changed in community, that still is diurnal in cycle, where physical work is just natural. Physical work doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't mean running an ultra marathon. It could be simpler things, right? Yeah. It could be the everyday living things that we do, because it's movement oriented. That's what I said. It's a practice of movement. The problem with saying fitness is it becomes something else.
Yeah.
Fitness is one of the movement, I suppose, expression of movement, right? But movement is what's important first. If you get movement, then you can decide what kind of movement. I'd like to dance. If that's the easiest thing for you to do, so that's really interesting, right? If you find it difficult going to the gym, go and dance. Why? Because you have social, you have a social equation, you have physicality, you serve 5 things, as opposed to going to the gym where maybe you're alone and, you may not be serving the social construct. But it's interesting that nobody will ever think about those things, right? So again, even when you're talking about this, the only reason that maybe the rural life today has degraded is because of the amount of fertilizers that we've started using, right? Because now what's happening is you have these belts of cancer because of pesticides and fertilizers, and the groundwater being infected, and the old, the green revolution area is becoming too alkaline. So there are other issues that have cropped up in that rural lifestyle. And that's a part of industrialization. So I think that unless that's an untouched area, that also becomes so difficult today, when that's something that we have to adapt around. So it's not the principles now of lifestyle. See, that becomes an environmental issue there. So they've got social, they've got all the other ones covered. But the problem then becomes an environmental issue. And that's why I said, see, for them, the concept of health will be cleaning up the environment.
Yeah.
Right? Or getting to a safer environment. It won't be like for us, maybe we can control that aspect and get organic food and this and that. But our problem is going to maybe be more socially oriented or oriented towards like, the time or the stress. And this is what, again, we go back to the first conversation of saying why health is, you can't have a generic nomenclature for health. It's not that we're trying to arrive at. It's an individual identity.
No, it's really interesting. And one of the things that, we're talking about, you mentioned that when we had a conversation a couple of days back, and also before we started recording, is energy budgeting. Like, what's that? And, what role does it play?
Let's take it like, again, the energy budgeting for me is very simple, right? It's about vitality. I mean, how come some people have lots of energy and other people don't have energy, right? Now, it could be biological, where on a cellular level, you're not getting the nutrients that you need. It could be the macronutrients, it could be the micronutrients, because all of that is connected to the mitochondria, right? It could be sleep, like we said. Because you're not getting enough sleep, then the energy budgeting is off. But, threat is a huge portion of this. Threat and pain become a huge portion of energy budgeting as well. And this is, again, the psychosocial aspect of it, right? And the neurological aspect of it. For example, say that you wear glasses. You'll be familiar with this. Say that you didn't have your glasses one day and you forgot them and they broke. You will have a very stressful day and you will be awfully tired, right? Why? Because your eyes are not able to perceive the world the way they used to. And that's a huge threat response. And you will feel very, very, very threatened, which means your energy budgeting will drop to save you from getting injured, because I'm not perceiving the world the right way. It's actually called extroception, right? So the other thing is introception. I may have acidity or I may have a gut issue. That will also affect my energy budgeting, because it's saying something is not right inside my body. And then you have your proprioception, my joints are hurting or I have rheumatic arthritis, and it won't allow you to move. And all of that is actually an energy budget, isn't it? Because every day you have, so much of energy.
Yeah.
Now, you can decide what you're going to do with that, right? You can heal, you can grow. Growing takes a lot of extra resources, but so does healing. So homeostasis, to be in balance, is actually a really tough thing, because you're always going through something, right? Have you noticed that when you're stressed, you have no energy?
Yeah.
Now, that's not physical.
Yeah, it's meant to.
So then that's what I meant by energy budgeting, right? I think it's very important on the utilization of energy. So you have to make sure from a biological perspective, yes, you have all the nutrients, you have all your micronutrients, you have all your minerals, right? And there are many different ways of doing that today with tests and stuff. And if you're tired, there's a reason why you're tired. Instead of pushing through it, maybe we need to just be more aware of why I'm tired. It's really interesting, right? We say we're tired. And you'll come up with an excuse saying, I didn't sleep last night. Is there anything else? What did I eat? Do I know what I ate? Maybe I'm gluten intolerant and I didn't even know it, and I've been eating wheat. And every time I eat wheat, I'm tired. But then you just got to get those frequency charts, right? You know that, every time I eat wheat, I don't feel so great. Or maybe you're lactose intolerant. A lot of people figure it out like that, and then they're like, this milk is not working for me. And then they do a test and they're like, it may be true. Because we don't have the lactase persistent gene, or you don't have the microbiome that has a lactobacillus bacteria that will actually help. But your body is actually speaking to you all the time. And when I'm talking about an energy budget, I'm saying you have a limited resource and you're using it. And if it's holding it back, there's a reason for it. And you may be able to find it quite fast if you're introspective, if you're able to look into yourself, right? And you have the time to do it.
Yeah. Now, Shiva, everything that you've said, there's a lot that's going on, right? But I have my life to live. There's a lot that I need to do on a day, right? This in itself looks like a full-time job for a person to take care of themselves and be, let's say, the peak of the health, maybe avoid disease or whatever the objective is, right? I want to stay fit, or I want to avoid my disease or prevent or whatever. It looks like a lot. On our regular day-to-day life, if we were to say, hey, these are the few ways that you can probably try and inculcate, we've already covered about maybe you take one thing, smaller, things, make those changes and do it consistently over the period of time. But like, is there anything else that you'd like to share on how we can really go about this?
Well, I think it's, you have to also say that you do many things right. It's so funny that our mind goes to only the things that we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Most people every day are doing many things right. So let's go to say, these are the things I'm doing right.
Yeah.
And not judge the things that are going wrong and then begin to correct them little by little, like you said. I think the main part is consistency. It's not going to the gym 3 times a week. It's that walk every day up and down the steps at the office, 10 times maybe, It's walking to the coffee shop, walking to the restaurant, taking those things. But again, you have to be cognizant of the environment. If there's too much of pollution, don't do that. Maybe you'll have to walk up and down in your office. Sunlight, easy stuff, right? Actually, none of it is, it's about being just that little bit more natural, just being aware and saying, look, I'd like to give myself this, having a cup of coffee outside or having breakfast outside in light may make the difference for you to feel 10 times better, right? But choose the small things. The information is out there. The problem is all of this knowledge has to be converted into your personal wisdom for it to be actually consistent, right? Experiment, explore. Give yourself the rewards that you need. To give yourself rewards, create goals that are simple enough for you to achieve. There's no point in trying to create a goal so far and then being disappointed. It's better to create very practical, real goals. Sometimes you may not know what that is, and that's why, you may need a specialist who will be telling you, like, this is the healthy way to lose this much weight in this time. Don't try to overdo it and do all of this, right? Maybe that guidance will help you if you're a kind of person who do that. If you're a self-learner, explore. And I think this is it, right? We're all so unique. You have to fit what this means to yourself. Make a change conceptually. It's not about making the change in short-term goals. And think about the whole construct from a conceptual change. Like, okay, this is what I'd like to change. This is a metric I'd like. And I have knee pain. I will do whatever rehab I have to do and get this sorted out. Make sure I eat well. So once those small goals, you'll realize that you're able to, it becomes bigger and bigger automatically because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a journey. It's not a destination. It's never ending. You're right. It's too much, but it's a journey. And there's no such thing as being healthy. It's about how well we live and what a function in this life that matters. Because longevity is interesting, but in a place like India, maybe you walk out of the road and you have an accident and you die. So it's so important to also live in the moment and make you have to somehow find, this is the psychological part, right? Where you have to be content with the changes that you're making. And that itself is compounding, right? In terms of the way you feel.
No, this has been really fascinating conversation, Shiv. And, like I said, like there's a lot that, need to take on and process from the conversation that we have just had and also the conversation that we've had, before this. And I must say, for me personally, I don't know, and also for somebody who's listening to this, if this is the first time getting exposed to this whole concept of looking health more holistically than just looking at health as a single entity in whatever, aspect that is, whether that's in the fitness or you trying to, eat better or whatever that, realm for you is. But looking at is an integrated part of everything else of your social and your psychological and your environment that you live in, all of that is contributing to, you. And I think, and that's what you're trying to do at Connect Venture. Like, if you want to be healthy and, be sustainable, then you can't be sustainable when environment is not. And then, doing everything right from fixing the soil to fixing the water to everything else, right? So in between, which is really, really fascinating. And I think now for anyone who's listening to this conversation and feeling like, oh my God, that was like a lot to chew on, what would you say? Where do they begin?
No, always start where there's a point of least resistance. What would you like to do? And start there. Just be aware that, it's just the beginning of a journey. Nobody gets here. Look, me too. You started somewhere, started as a martial artist, and I'm like, and then you open it up. It's like an onion, has multiple layers. Every layer you peel, there's another layer and another layer. And I think the journey is what's exciting because it's like It's the same as seeking a reward. It's an endless rabbit hole. And it's okay, because you know what? If you actually did that, Bijay, aren't we really complex creatures as human beings? I mean, look at every thought, everything that we have. Why are we simplifying things? Even the people that are listening to things know how complex we are as individuals. Do you think our health will be any less complex? Is it actually right? Do you say that there's a simple solution out there? I mean, would we do a disservice if we said that? I think the job that we have at hand is to say that it is a complex piece, isn't it? I mean, the humanity is a complex piece. When you talk about health, you're talking about the functionality of a being, right? And the entirety of a being. How is that not complex? Especially a human being in the context of, evolution and anthropology. It is going to be complex, right? Now, if we simplify it, it takes the beauty of our own introspection and all the work that we've done in science away. And everybody is smart enough to understand this. So maybe it's time to bring the complexity so people know that there are multiple modalities to change, and there's always hope. It's the opposite. If you did one thing and it didn't work, you were like, shit. But now you have a million things that you can change and everything will work for you. It's about getting the synchronicity of that right? And imagine it more like, one of those puzzles that you just got to get right, as that just fits, as opposed to trying to, work hard at it. Because we're designed to be healthy. So you just got to do what you're designed to do, right? We're not designed to be sick. And we are an organism with other organisms inside. We have 10 more bacterial cells in us than human cells. And obviously, from the outside, we're interacting with the entire world. So from that perspective, I don't think we should shy away from complexity, because it's our nature. And we have the ability to respond to it. We only don't have the ability because we're too stressed to take the time and the energy to do it. But then it's okay. All I'm saying is take a small sliver of the piece, start there, make it consistent, make it stick. Do the next piece. Suddenly one day you're healthy and you know all these things about your body and you don't know how you got there. And that's the journey. Because if you tried it with an agenda, and that's fine. But then you can't chew the whole agenda and say, I'm going to be healthy, right? If it took you 60 years to be sick, it may take you 6 months to get better. And you just got to look at it very pragmatically. And I think you'll find that it's actually much simpler than it is. The only thing is, take the first step. Don't think about it. Just take that first step and you'll see how easy it is. Because after you do the first one, the next step is easy. Because you're already off balance. You have to take the next one, right?
This has been a great conversation, Shiv. Thank you so much for taking time out, and really, love this conversation. And now this, for me, is the beginning of, looking at all these different aspects and start going down the rabbit hole and maybe, look much deeper and try and see what are the small minute changes that, can be done on a day-to-day basis, which looks simpler, and also then have a markers or the milestones that you said, right? So which is really, really interesting. Anything else that you'd like to share?
Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And this has been excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.